Hey, we're taking a look at issue 7. So on the cover, we've got this rough board coming up against a planing stop, and that is in reference to an article I wrote in this issue about work holding solutions, free work holding. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. In the table of contents, we have an interview with Peter Lamb, who's a really inspiring guy to hang out with. His shop and his home are full of these handmade things that he's found around the world. Then we have an article that Joshua wrote about David Pye and unpacking his concept of the workmanship of risk. Very cool stuff. After that, we have an article by Bill Pavlak from Colonial Williamsburg, where he is, it's kind of half archaeology and half woodworking, looking at the tool marks that he found on an 18th century cabriole leg that was discovered under their shop in a stream. Really crazy stuff. Then that article I mentioned about work holding solutions from 3 different traditions around the world, solutions that don't use vices or any kind of fixed work holding. It's a much freer way of working. Then we have Richard Arnold talking about a good day's work, a day in the life of a village carpenter, and he talks about what constituted a day's work back in the day. Next, we have an article that was an interview with one of the last remaining shakers in the world, Brother Arnold had. This is called As Part of a Life Lived, a shaker's perspective on his community's craft. Such a rich interview, such a rich time at the Shaker interview in New Gloucester, Maine. Beautiful furniture, but a lot to think about too when it comes to our perception of shaker craft. And then we have an article that Kieran Binney actually wrote for us about Welsh vernacular woodworking. A very sweet article, and about using these different bends and crooks to make these chairs and these spoon racks and different things in Welsh traditions. We have an examination of an 18th century high chest of drawers, very cool piece. And then after that, our only title ever with a hashtag in it. This is a piece by Jared Dahl called The New Wood Culture. Very thought-provoking about where craft is going into the future. Then we have from George Walker, Axioms of Pre-Industrial Craft, where he's unpacking the geometrical ways of thinking about laying out for pre-industrial furniture. So a lot in this issue.
Yeah, my favorite one, though, was the one by Brother Arnold, writing about his shaker faith and how that informs craftsmanship. Because as he argued, basically craftsmanship, the shaker craftsmanship idea was kind of taken on and co-opted by antiques dealers. And they just created this mystique about shaker faith and how it relates to craftsmanship in order to put a higher dollar value on their furniture. And he said, hey, listen, that's not really doing us justice. We're craftsmen trying to make a living, trying to sustain our community. And so it was a really interesting thing, because a lot of people have a lot of ideas about what shakers believe. But then you ask a shaker, and he tells you, hey, they're putting words in our mouths. So that article was just doing that interview, spending time with Brother Arnold, going through the collection, looking at all the guts. You want to see what shaker furniture looks like on the inside? This is the place to see it. You can look at all the museums if they'll let you go back there. But if you want to see photographs of insides of shaker furniture, it's in here. It'll blow you away.
Yeah, and I think one that I found really interesting is this one by Bill Pavlak about unearthing the 18th century cabriole leg. As I said, literally some legs were found preserved in a stream underneath and behind what was the cabinet shop in the 18th century. And as they were excavating, they found these legs preserved in the mud and pulled them up. And so he examines them. He looks for tool marks. If you can imagine tool marks surviving, he asks, why were these legs thrown out into the stream? What was wrong with them?
That's a good question to ask.
It is, but there are so many good questions in here. So like I said, it's part archaeology, part woodworking. It's kind of like the Indiana Jones of woodworking going on here. It's a very thought-provoking article.
Yeah, and I think, so the big takeaway, I think, from this issue, as we were putting it together, what we found, a kind of a common theme that ended up developing was the difference between an industrial mentality and craft mentality. If you're making something unique and special, like, say, David Pye talking about this workmanship of risk and an artisan working with a hand tool to guide the tool versus an industrial mentality. And then some people, fleshing that out, like Peter Lamb fleshing that out more, Jared Dahl talking about the New Wood culture and how this desire to engage is so different from an industrial mentality, and that is just woven throughout this issue. Even though we didn't intend it, that's what this issue is running on. So if that kind of thing is on your wavelength, you're interested in that, this might be the issue for you.